Hi, I'm Casey and I'm a natural born costumer. A couple months ago, somebody asked me to make a video on draping, which I'm finally getting around to because life. But draping's not just one thing. So I'm going to break it up into a few different videos. This first one is going to be your basic dress, your basic sloper, and moving a dart around. Video 2 is going to be on draping on the bias, and video 3 is going to be on alternatives to darts, and we'll kind of see where this goes from there. I will probably end up doing ones that focus on sleeves and skirts, and maybe even doing an episode just on the back because that's a little bit different. I touch on it in this one, but it's kind of just a little different. So we'll see where it goes from there. I hope you enjoy. The fabric that I'm going to use is striped. I would recommend actually starting with a plaid or a gingham so that you can clearly see the grain of the fabric in both directions. This is stiff, which is going to allow us to see our creases very clearly, which is kind of nice while we're doing this. So your basic bodice shape has a few points where you want your grain line to be perfectly vertical. And the most clear and obvious one is going to be the center front. So I'm going to leave a bit of extra on all of the things which normally you would cut off at a certain phase. But since I'm not actually going to make the dress, I'm just going to tuck it back as much as I can. So I'm going to find that center front line. And if you were going to do this on, both sides, then you would use a folded edge for this. But I'm just going to drape one side because when you're designing something that's going to be symmetrical, you can do that and then you would just copy the pattern, duplicate. So we're going to start that way. So you would also want to fold back a seam allowance that's on the straight of grain. So I'm going to go ahead and push that forward just a little bit. Then I want to make sure that it's on the same grain line, which is where these straight lines on the fabric really come in handy. The reason I prefer to use gingham is because the lines are really part of the weave, and there are others that are that, but I like gingham because it has it in both directions and whatnot. Plaids are good for that also, but you want to beware because sometimes there are printed plaids, and that's not going to be what you want. So now I have my center front, and that's always going to be where you want to start when you're doing something straight of grain. And from there, you kind of need to decide where your darts are going to be, how your shaping is going to be, depending on how fitted you want your garment and things like that. For a standard sloper shape, the dart is usually down in the waist. So I'm going to go ahead and smooth the fabric up. And you want to make sure you're leaving enough seam allowance up in the shoulder area. You just want it to be really smooth. And this part will probably not be quite straight of grain. It will be a little bit tilted. And then we're just going to kind of continue to smooth it down. And then by the time I get to the side, my grain is quite tilted. And that will depend on your bust size and body shape and things like that. So that's just kind of to be expected. And then Now I'm going to actually squeeze them together to get my dart line. And you want it tight, not like too tight, but comfortable at the waist. And then aimed directly up to the bust point. And I'm going to totally be grabbing my dress form here. But you want it aiming to the point, but not quite there. The closer you get that dart to the bust point, the more bullet bra you're going to end up with. So if you're going for 1950s, you're going to pull that right up there because it will be very, very cone shaped. If you're going for something a little bit more organic and soft, then you're going to want to make sure that it does end a little bit down below. And that's also going to depend on your person. This dress form has one very pointy bust and one much smoother bust. So it also kind of depends on that. And then, of course, when you're actually stitching it together, this would be on the inside. But that is your basic sloper. I didn't get enough seam allowance here. I would ideally have it go all the way to this line, which many dress forms don't have. This one's adjustable, but you can kind of see the height of the shoulder. You want it to come at least to that and a seam allowance worth. So if you use a 5/8, you'd want it 5/8 past that. I did not do that today. So you can see it's very smooth here. And then you would cut out the armhole, etc. when you're done. What if you don't want this dart here? Or what if you want the side to be more straight of grain vertically? We can move the dart. And this time we're going to put the dart going straight into the side seam over here. So instead of starting at the top and working my way down, I'm going to start on the side and work my way around. All right, so now I have it straight across here. There is a little bit of a gather there, and depending on how fitted you want it, you could take another dart there. I could try to finesse it over a little bit more, but it really wants to kind of tweak around here, and that's part of just following the fabric and figuring out what it's going to end up doing on the body. Because if I pull it, I can pull it, but it gives me all these weird creases and things, and that's not what you're looking for. So I'm going to let it relax a little bit. I am going to pull it, but I'm not going to pull it too much. And then I'm going to smooth up to where we want the dart and down to where we want the dart. And all these same rules apply for the back of the garment. It just won't be as extreme as it is around the bust. And usually instead of centering around the bust, you're going to be centering around the shoulder blade, which on many people kind of sticks out a little bit on their back, or some. I tend to have a little bit of kind of fat that sits even down below that. So it depends on your body exactly where that's going to be. So with someone with a larger bust, you're going to end up oftentimes wanting to take multiple darts. It's something that I have to do quite frequently. So, and you can kind of fiddle this a little bit in here. If I pull it up, that alleviates a lot of that weird gathering there. So maybe I can pull it up into the shoulder a bit more. That might help. That helps alleviate it. There is still a little bit of that there, and I personally would take a smaller secondary dart here. So now you can see my side is also more straight of grain. When you're dealing with stripes, this is going to be a much more flattering look. That way the stripes look more symmetrical. You will end up with a little bit of a weird gap right there, but because it's kind of in a place where people don't necessarily see very often, it usually doesn't cause as many problems. You can also move the dart up higher. This time I'm going to take it all the way around into the shoulder seam. And so that can also be a very flattering look. This is actually how you would end up with a princess seam. You have a dart up here, you have a dart continuing to down here. You can make this princess line curve up and across here, can go into the arm's eye, it can go down into the shoulder seam, but those are more unusual. Usually it'll come right up into the shoulder seam up here. So you can see that with a dart here and a dart here, you might as well just have it slit all the way down and have it in two panels. And that ends up being a very, very flattering shape. So that is your basics. From there, you get into design aspects. So you probably, in most situations, aren't going to want your neckline up into your neck. You're going to want something a little bit more flattering. So you can fold it down and kind of see what you like.
I hope that was all helpful. From the end there where I just folded down the neck, but you can cut it into any sorts of shape. That's how you get sweetheart necklines, all sorts of things. The moment when I realized that there's fit things and there's design things was really very freeing for me. Fit things are generally where two seams come together. Anything else is really design. It's how do you want it to be? And that is the most fun part of draping. Maybe I'll do another episode just on that. I don't know. We'll see. So, anyway, thank you and have a good one.